Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much. I want to begin on a note of gratitude, Speaker. Joining us again in the members' gallery today are some of Ontario's leading road safety advocates, people who have spent a long time working for safety in our neighborhoods. I shouted out most of them this morning, but I want to particularly shout out again because of the 3-hour trek she made from Wasaga Beach, Peggy Hawthorne for the United Seniors of Ontario, representing 300,000 seniors in the province of Ontario. Thank you, Peggy. And so many others there. The bill before this House, Speaker, Bill 40, the Moving Ontarians Safely Act, is also endorsed by fantastic organizations like Good Roads, Cycling Ontario, as I mentioned, the United Seniors of Ontario, Spinal Cord Injury of Ontario, Bike Toronto, Bike Ottawa, Family and Friends for Safe Streets. I could spend the 12 minutes, Speaker, thanking with gratitude the people who've come behind this bill. But I think it's more important for the purposes of our debate this evening to talk about why this bill's on the floor. And to begin on a note of modesty and honesty, this isn't about Ottawa Centre or anything I had to do as Speaker. Bill 40 is the culmination of 10 years of work in this place. This precise bill before the members of this House has been on the floor of this debate, this House, this august House, for 10 years. So I'm only the latest person to do so. This is not a New Democrat specific bill either, Speaker. Liberals have risen in this place, Speaker, in favor of this bill. Conservative members have. I know the member for Guelph, in his capacity as the Green Leader of Ontario, has spoken in favor of this bill. Road safety is not a partisan issue. This is one of these things that we should be able to get behind. And why? Well, let's point to the Ministry of Transportation Ontario's own research, Speaker. In their latest road safety annual report from 2022, they noted that there were precisely 3,066 injuries of pedestrians as a consequence of reckless driving. 466 of those were major incidents or fatal incidents. I want to move to cyclists, Speaker, where the same research pointed out that in 2022 there were 1,412 injuries of cyclists. 135 of those were major incidents, critical or fatal. And what I learned in preparing for this debate tonight, Speaker, is that when I consulted first responder groups like police who are called to these incidents, or when I contacted folks who work in emergency rooms from across Ontario, they told me, Joel, those numbers are way understated. What you are actually looking at the moment in Ontario, Speaker, is a rate of 20 people admitted to ERs per day across this province because of reckless driving, which causes serious injury or death. I want you to, all of us are political representatives in this building, Speaker, and I want all of us to think about what it would look like. 135 major or fatal cycling collisions, acts of road violence. 466 major or fatal pedestrian acts of violence. It's like entire apartment buildings that we would canvass, Speaker, filled with people who are critically injured or dead. And behind all of these incidents are human beings, Speaker, and I want to read into the record some of the people that we met in the course of doing this research. I want to talk about Serene Summers from Ottawa, who on February 13, 2012, was hit as she was crossing Meadowlands Avenue in my city. Critically injured, will live the rest of her life with a debilitating brain injury. The gentleman who did this fled the scene and later tried to sell his car to avoid responsibility. Thankfully, he was found by police investigation. But if you can believe it, Speaker, he originally tried to attend his sentencing, organized by a justice of the peace, virtually by Zoom, not facing Serene, not trying to hear about how this had changed her life. The justice of the peace dismissed the case, demanded the gentleman be before him and Serene and her family, and this is what she said. Quote, I was a happy person, a happy kid. I played volleyball. I liked to hang out with my friends, ride my bike, anything and everything a normal kid would do. My goal was to start up a babysitting business. Then February 13th, 2022 happened. I was hit by a car, your car. You hit me, backed up to see what you hit, then drove off. You lied to the police when they asked about your involvement. You said you'd sold your car the day before. All this while, I was lying in a hospital bed for weeks and weeks, crying in pain. We begged you to come forward and take responsibility for what you did, but you didn't. In this incident, Speaker, what happened to Serene Summers resulted in a 1-year driver's license suspension and a fine of $2,000. And I believe, as I stand in this House before you all, the minimum threshold for anybody found responsible for hurting or killing someone in a situation like Serene should at least be a 1-year driver's license suspension. And that's what Bill 40 does. I want to talk about Abu Bakr Syed from Scarborough. The member from Scarborough Southwest introduced me to Mr. Syed. His brother Azfar Syed was with me this morning as we did a media conference on Bill 40. Mr. Syed was hit while he was crossing a street in his neighborhood in Scarborough. And the person who hit him, this was not the first time this 30-year-old had been involved in a situation of impaired, reckless driving. He is currently in jail. But what Bill 40 does is introduce measures by which, when you have your first encounter of reckless driving, you are required, as is the case in the state of Oregon, you are required to undertake mandatory driver re-education. You are required to perform community service. You're required to be present at the victim impact statement, personally, not through a designate, to hear about the harm you cause. And I want to believe in my heart, Speaker, most people who are responsible for acts of road violence, they want to have remorse. And we want laws in this province to try to reach them, to affect that remorse, to affect a change in behavior. I want to believe, and this is sad, Speaker, that if Ontario had mandatory driver re-education for this 30-year-old man, we may have prevented Abu Bakr Syed's death. But as it stands, his family is grieving. Azfar said, quote, "We recognize this is not an isolated incident in Toronto. There are numerous victims' families who are experiencing the same nightmares. We can only demand stronger legislation," he said, "to ensure road safety." I want to talk about Jess Speaker, who we introduced this morning, who's sitting right over there, Speaker, who was critically injured in 2015 on her bicycle by a woman driving an SUV, who was fined, if you can believe it, $300. And driving soon after this act happened. The crash threw Jess off her bike and left her with a broken spine, a brain injury, and extensive soft tissue damage. The tissue damage, in turn, caused serious blood clot-related complications that nearly killed her as she was attempting to recover. The woman who hit Jess appealed the fine and retained the right to drive. This, Speaker, is what I think we must change. We've been debating changing it for 10 years, but there's an opportunity before us. And let me be very clear. There's an opportunity before us to change it because people like Jess Speaker, through her grief, decided to make her grief public and become a public advocate, like Meredith Wilkinson, like so many others in this province. And I thank them. I thank them tonight for that. You know, what I've learned, Speaker, in the course of research for this legislation is that tragedies are happening all the time with road violence. Just recently, on November 12th, Patrick Lynch in Kingston was hit. Hit not far from the Collins Bay Correctional Institution. If people have been to Kingston before, big wide road used by Kingston cyclists all the time. Patrick is somebody, you want to talk about cyclists, Speaker. This is a gentleman who cycled across Australia from Brisbane to Melbourne. This is a gentleman who rode his bicycle from Kingston to Charleston, South Carolina. This is somebody who educated others in the Kingston Cycle Club about how to ride safely, how to take a lane, how to wear bright reflective clothing, how to make sure that your bike could be seen by drivers. Now, this tragedy, I should say, is being investigated by the Kingston police. But I want to believe that someone like Patrick deserved better than this. And the person responsible for this incident deserved better than it too. And this is where, as I end my remarks for this debate, Speaker, I want to be honest in saying, and my friends over there know this well, this bill, which I really hope we can get behind together and pass the second reading, send to committee so any amendments that my friends feel need to be made can be made. This bill is going to be part of the solution to the problem, but it will not solve all the problems. Because even the preliminary reporting about what happened to Patrick Lynch tells me that there's a lot we need to do in the province of Ontario to make sure roads are designed safely. Roads are designed safely towards a vision of 0 fatalities, 0 injuries. Everybody being able to get where they need to go in their community safely and without harm. And that helps the vulnerable road user. But let's be honest, it also helps the person. Can you imagine living with the guilt of critically injuring or killing somebody with your vehicle? It helps that person too. It makes our communities safe. So, Speaker, as I end, I want to invite us to consider what this moment is. It's a moment where we can actually come together in this province to finally say, after 10 years of debate, 10 years of discussion, that the time for discussion is over, that we can come behind the evidence, which leads us to believe we needn't fill up entire apartment buildings with people who are either dead or critically injured as a consequence of road violence. We can do better. We can and must do better. And we often stand in this place and we say, let's work together more. And it's hard because the purpose of this place is adversarial. We're always arguing with the government because we disagree on stuff. It's a critical function of this place. But as I began, Speaker, I said road safety is not a partisan issue. And I believe that in my heart. And the way we can get past unnecessary adversarial debates is by looking at the evidence and looking at the stories. Some of the stories I talked about tonight. As members of this House knows, one of the ways we promoted Bill 40, I jumped on my bike and I rode from Ottawa to Toronto with my good friend John Perkis and a fantastic team, some of whom are here tonight. Sharon Lee is right over there, Ethan Smith-Johnson, Erica Bronovan, Ty Coulter. Bless you all for supporting that ride. And we met people along the way in communities, large and small, communities represented by every political party in this House, and we kept hearing, Joel, enough talk. It's time for action. Let's pass Bill 40. Let's make tonight a historic opportunity. Let's send this committee, fix whatever needs to be fixed. Let's keep Ontario safe.